On December 2nd, 1977, Rosa Simper was found badly beaten, sexually assaulted and strangled in her bedroom located in South Australia. Her room had been ransacked, however nothing of value appeared to have been taken. At the time of the crime scene investigation and evidence collection was handled by the South Australian Police and not a single forensic laboratory, unlike the way things are run today. There were 5 major evidence types found during the case. These included metal and paint particles, wood particles, foam spicules, seed endosperm, and various fibre types. These 5 evidence types were used to link Edward Splatt to the crime scene. Sergeant Barry Cox was the lead investigator on the case and conducted the initial analysis of all this evidence. A ratio of 25% metal to 75% paint particles were found at the scene, and later this same ratio was discovered on the clothing of Edward Splatt. The metal particles found from both sources did not come from Wilson's factory. They were, however, determined to have come from Splatt's personal workshop. During the Royal Commission, the issue of this ratio was brought into question. This evidence was based on Locard's exchange principle. However, the theory was taken even further, suggesting that transference was equal. In no part of Locard's principle does it state that the transference of tracer evidence is proportional between 2 surfaces. Secondly, the determination that the metal particles matched those found at Splatt's home was insignificant because the particles are commonly found in the environment. Various wood particles were found at the scene, collected via vacuuming. 2 different types of wood were identified. Sergeant Cox worked with Mr. Kutchell and determined them to be pinus and jarrah. The evidence presented to a jury would have been convincing to the unscientific mind, creating a biased opinion of the accused. However, during the re-evaluation, this interpretation of evidence was determined to be unscientific. The identification of the reddy brown wood particles as jarrah were not possible without a much more detailed analysis. Expert Dr. Heather stated that it was not possible to differentiate between jarrah and kari, making the prosecution's argument invalid.
Cox noted that the foam particles found at the crime scene were all similar in size and had a star-like appearance. Similar particles were located on Splatt's car coat. Both the evidential spicules and those collected from the coat were sent to Miss Parabik, who carried out gas chromatography pyrolysis. This test determined the particles to be polyurethane, a very common type of foam. She stated there were no dissimilarities between the foam found at the 2 different sources. During the Royal Commission, due to the common nature of this type of foam, any similarities seen between those found at the crime scene and those collected from Splatt's coats were considered to be of minimal weighting in the case, and any verdict based on this evidence should not stand. Five seed types were found on Mrs. Simper's bedsheets. These same seed types, along with 2 others not found, were also discovered at Splatt's aviary. The variation between the number of seed types was explained by the prosecution as due to the feeding habits of the birds. During the original trial, there was much debate surrounding whether the seeds were cooked or uncooked, and in the end determined to be uncooked due to the specific polarization characteristics seen. However, experts during the Royal Commission stated that if the seeds had been cooked in the presence of high levels of fat and/or sugar, these polarization characteristics would appear uncooked. An alternative hypothesis was introduced by the defence, saying that Mrs. Simper was in the habit of eating digestive biscuits in bed, and this could explain the presence of the seed endosperm found.
The Bayesian approach is an important aspect in forensic science. This approach helps to maintain the integrity of an investigation. It requires forensic scientists to remain impartial throughout the investigation. A forensic scientist's job is to present the facts of the case based on their thorough analysis of a piece of evidence. This statement of facts must be free from bias toward either side and must be made in clear and concise language to not sway or confuse a jury. In the case of R.V. Edward Charles Splatt, this impartiality was often compromised. The use of emotive and biased language by the expert witnesses was often observed. The use of words such as similar, matched, and consistent were repeatedly included in the expert's conclusion of the evidence. The use of these words helped to influence the jury, as these words convey complete certainty in the positive identification of evidential findings. This, however, was most definitely not the case. There were many doubts surrounding the findings, and in many cases the evidence was not thoroughly analysed to a point where certainty could be concluded. Furthermore, there was a lack of experience from many of the experts as forensic scientists, meaning they were not aware of the presentation issues, and so their testimony was often ambiguous and showed slight bias. The consequences of outcomes stemming from Splatt's conviction varied from those close to the case and those unaffected by it. Splatt received $300,000 worth of compensation for his unjust time spent in prison. While this was monetarily sufficient for this time period, no amount of money could repair the psychological damage caused to Splatt and his family from the wrongful conviction. On the other hand, society benefited from the Splatt case, as the Royal Commission brought forward positive changes. The recommendation of an impartial forensic society to ensure the validity and fairness of forensic evidence was the first of its kind in South Australia and would help to ensure that cases such as Splatt's were significantly decreased.